something that's too big for the bench. It's a console model. Which is actually in pretty good shape. This one is a Philips. We get them here in Canada quite often, but they're quite rare in the States because they had big problems with patent and trademark with Philco. And that's the back end of it. Too much sunlight on the top there. Anyway, it does have tubes in it. It's got a European breakout of tubes. And I'm just about ready to open the back end of it. I haven't looked inside to see what's inside. But it's sort of the low end one. There's just a turntable and AM/FM 4-speaker radio, but I don't think it's stereophone. Oh yeah, stereophone, high fidelity. Of course the turntable is a bust. Not even any sense in trying to restore it because I believe these things cost about $45 a crack. I have better ones anyway. And that in there was a record storage place underneath. And these are actually coming back in vogue because the millennial generation find them really cool. So I had this, was going to scrap it for parts, just the tubes mainly and the transformer, but then somebody said, oh, I'd love to have that in my new apartment, so I'm going to fix her up. Typical stuff once they stop being used. People use them for just everyday storage and everyday standing stuff. It's got water damage, a little sun damage, so I'll sand it down a little bit, hence the reason we're outside. But first, let's take a look on the inside. Definitely not the original screws. Just two of them, so it's been opened before. God knows what's been mucked with inside. Now let's see. That looks like an original screw. Definitely Canadian, Philips head. Or is it Robertson? Never could remember. There we go. Ooh! Not much in there. Whew. Not the dust. Itty bitty little speakers. Let's do a little commando here. Okay. So there it is, all circus boards. At least the chassis can come out easy enough, and it's all hooked up, so it's not going to be too hard to repair. Good. AM/FM dipole. There's the record player up there, which can come out automatically. Clean it up. Like most of these systems, the stereo was bought from overseas. The cabinet was made in Canada, and therefore they could get Canadian made on it. If you look at the other side, right there, it says, where's that? Made in Canada. Of course, it had the newer 1960s plug. You couldn't unplug it without pulling that off. Always makes it a pain in the ass when you're trying to work on it, but we'll take out the chassis and see how it goes. Okay, the chassis just slides straight out of there with the radio intact. Okay. So one good thing about checking these things out before it, I'm not sure if you can see it, but if I move this across here,
warning, 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 warning,
I'll get a yellow dust. And that is Zinc-Chromate paint, which, of course, this is a heavy metal, and you don't want to breathe that in. So I got to pull this out first, and it's time to get the old N95 mask out when I'm pulling it out and give it a good vacuum to get rid of all that crap. Oh well, more stuff to do. I unhooked all the wires, marked all the ones that aren't identifiable. That's the pickup and the power for the stereo up the turntable. That's the speaker one down here. There were 2 screws that hold it in, plus a neat little light bulb that lights up the Philips thing in the front, which should be cool. And you can see, as I take it out, ooh, a lot of toxic shit. Pardon the expression. Look at the Zinc-Chromate on that, all over the place. Nasty, nasty, nasty. I'll probably have to take it all apart and clean the whole chassis and repaint it. Fortunately, it's circuit boards. It shouldn't be too hard. And they are over dirty. Oh well. Oh yeah, it's stereophonic. But that Zinc-Chromate is terrible stuff. Even touching my bare skin is beginning to itch. Anyway, let's go put it on the outside bench and see what's up. So looking at it closely, I think what I'm going to have to do is take all the circuit boards off and all the other stuff and then clean down the chassis, because look at the Zinc-Chromate in here and over here, just encrusting everything, and that stuff is nasty. Shouldn't be too hard to do. Circuit boards come off fairly easily. Anyway, yeah, we'll start by taking out the tubes.
While I'm busily disassembling my radio, I think I'm going to take the opportunity to explain why we don't see many Philips radios in North America from the golden age of radio. In 1936, the first All-American 5 radios made their appearance on the market. And for the first time, consumers had a cheap radio they could buy. Philco had one of the cheapest, coming in at about $20. Meanwhile, back in Europe, Philips came up with its own 5-tube design radios. But it found itself locked out of both the French and the German market. So they tried to expand into the US. However, for whatever reason, they decided that they didn't want to use their Philips brand. They decided to use something called Philco. Of course, Philco took exception to this, especially as the Philips radio was marketed in the $25 range, which happened to be one of Philco's most profitable product lines. Philco, of course, got an immediate injunction against Philips, I think in 1936, and it wasn't until 1940 that the matter was finally settled, and Philco won the case. So one will only usually find a few floor models of Philips radios, plus the odd small tabletop radio that came in after the war. The story here in Canada is a bit different, as we can find both Philips and Philco radios. The story starts in Canada when the Rogers Majestic company was bought out by another manufacturer in 1941, and then sold to Royal Philips shortly after the war, I think in 1946. Philips took over the Rogers Majestic plant and started building and rebranding its own radios into the Canadian market. Beginning in the late 40s, you begin to see both Philips and Rogers Majestic radios in the Canadian market. By the early 1960s, the Rogers Majestic brand was being phased out, and you start seeing twin-branded radios like the one I'm working on today. In the end, it is Philips that has the last laugh, because Philco did not survive long into the modern era. It was bought by Philips in 1981, largely so to get around the 1941 judgment, and the Philco brand was all but gone from the US market by the mid-1980s, though it's still around in Europe for some reason. Now, if there's any collectors out there that happen to have a Philco radio, you've got a rare piece, as I have yet to even find a photo of one, or even what the logo looked like. Anyway, let's get back to me tearing this darn thing apart, because it looks like I'm just about done.
Got a little painting table set up here. As you can see, lots of dust still. Phew. Yeah, put my mask on. Don't want to breathe that crap in. Still lots of dust on it. I tried a little acetone to clean it up, but it didn't take the Zinc-Chromate off, so I'm going to have to use something stronger, like paint remover, and see how that works. Sometimes you just have to work it out. If I can't do that, I'll just have to wipe it down and then put a base over it. Hey, this is just regular paint stripper. I'm going to put a dot in the middle. That's better. I'll put a dot in the middle and see how well it works. Yeah, and let it sit for 15-20 minutes. Come back and see what it does. Alright, let's see if we get down to bare metal now. good 25 minutes. Yeah, that's taken enough of it off. Good. So while that paint remover is working, should stay on for at least 45 minutes, half an hour, I'm going to start working on the cabinet. At least get the top nice and clean. All I need really is 200 grit sandpaper and a really nice gentle orbital sander. You can do it by hand, but this one's easy. It's just along the grain that way. Anyway, that's all sanded down. Now just add a little water on top to clean off the dust and to see if we got any more imperfections. Just simple cloth, rub her down. Anyway, the other stuff. That was about 15 minutes worth of sanding with 200 grit. It doesn't take very long. You don't want to go down to bare wood, just down to the last layer of paint.
Eventually.
Took 3 more coats, but I got about 90% of it off. I think if I let it sit overnight, then give it a good wash with acetone, I should be able to get the rest of it off, and then I can spray paint it.
The next day.
So as usual, you do a test piece first, and I did a nice piece of metal that goes on the side over there somewhere, and it's fine. Do the whole box now.
Well, there was absolutely nothing special about the painting. I just used regular automotive primer and laid down a few coats of it. The only thing of note was I left a large number of components still on the chassis, so I just covered those with masking tape, and that's about it.
Yeah, let's do the other side. Okay, so that's both sides topped off. Nice and smooth. Water it down one more time. All I'm doing now is taking up little spots as I see them. Just some sandpaper. For example, right there.
A few moments later.
Oh, for the bin wax. Easy stuff to use. Just spray it on nice and thin. Wipe off the excesses.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
The staining came out nice. I got the color really well balanced on that. So it was just 2 layers of stain. I think I'll put another couple layers of clear coat on top just to give it some protection and give it a little shine. But that's about it really. If you really want to know about doing varnishing and not varnishing, but staining wood and whatnot and matching colors, there's tons of other YouTube videos do it much better than I do. All done painting finally. Yeah, take all this nasty tape off of here.
With all the mundane parts of the restoration finished off, I think it's a good time to end this video. Stay tuned for the next one where I finally get into a little bit of the electronics. Goodbye for now.
1, 2, 1, 2.